The chains that held her, she had no name. At least, not one she remembered. They called her many things, beast, thing, product, but never anything kind. She was just one more slave among hundreds. Her body was covered in old scars. Her eyes had lost their light long ago, and the chains on her wrists had become a part of her. For years, she lived in darkness. Her cell was small and cold. The only food she got was dry pieces of something she didn't recognize. No one spoke to her except when they gave orders or shouted. Every day felt the same: pain, hunger, silence. Then came the auction. It was held deep underground on a planet forgotten by most. Rich aliens in fancy robes came to buy entertainment, servants, or worse. She stood quietly with her head down while the others were dragged out one by one. She did not expect to be chosen. No one wanted her. She looked weak, dirty, and broken. But then she heard footsteps. They were different from the others, slower, quieter. The buyers often walked with pride, laughing and pointing. But this one said nothing. She raised her eyes just a little and saw boots. Not alien boots, human boots. She had heard of humans. Some said they were dangerous. Others said they were kind. But all agreed they were strange. The human man looked at her without speaking. He didn't laugh. He didn't call her names. He didn't even ask for a price. He simply said, "I'll take this one." The alien seller was confused. This one? She's no good. Damaged. Can't speak. Maybe not even think. The human looked straight into the seller's eyes. I said, "I'll take her." Coins were exchanged. The chain around her neck was removed. For the first time in years. She expected him to put a new one on, but he didn't. Instead, he gave her a long coat and walked away. She followed slowly, unsure what was happening. Outside, the light was too bright. Her eyes hurt. She tripped and fell. The human didn't scold her. He just turned and offered his hand. She didn't take it. She didn't trust hands. Hands had only ever hit her. But he waited, patient and silent. Later, he took her to his ship. It was small but clean. He showed her a room. It had a bed. A real bed, soft, with blankets. She sat on the floor instead. He brought her food-warm soup with soft bread. She stared at it for a long time before touching it. Then, slowly, she ate. Her hands shook, not from cold, but from confusion. No one had fed her like this before. That night, he left her alone. No chains, no locked doors. She sat awake for hours, waiting for him to return and hurt her. But he didn't come back. Only silence. The next day, he tried to speak to her. "Do you have a name?" She didn't answer. He didn't ask again. Instead, he said, "You can sleep here as long as you want. You're safe." Safe. That word felt strange, like a lie. But something in his voice made it feel less scary. He gave her simple clothes. Showed her how to use water to clean herself. He never looked at her the way the others did. Not like property. Not like a tool. He looked at her like a person. Still, she did not speak. One evening, she found him writing in a notebook. She peeked at it from the corner of the room. There were many words she didn't understand, but one word caught her eye. A short word. Wife. It was written beside a small drawing. The drawing looked like her. She didn't know what it meant. Was he planning to sell her again? Give her to someone else? Or was this some new trick? She went back to her corner and curled up, her mind full of questions and fear. That night, she didn't sleep. Days passed. She stayed quiet, but she watched him closely. He never shouted, never forced her to do anything. He just did his work, fixed broken machines, and brought her food. And every night, he said the same words, "You're safe now." She didn't believe him yet. But for the first time in many years, she wanted to. Still, Deep inside, she waited for the moment it would all fall apart, that he would turn like all the others had, that the pain would return. But until then, she held on to the only thing that gave her a little hope. That strange word wife. It echoed in her heart like a distant song she once knew, but had forgotten. And though she didn't understand it yet, it made her heart beat just a little faster. Learning to breathe again, she did not run away on the first day. But not because she trusted him. She simply didn't know where to go. Her whole life had been walls and cages. Now the door was open, and that scared her even more. In the morning, she sat in the corner of the room, her arms around her knees. The human man walked in and placed a warm cup of tea near her. Then he left without a word. She stared at the cup for a long time. The smell was soft and sweet. Her hands trembled as she lifted it, expecting it to burn her or make her sick. But it didn't. It was gentle. She did not speak. Not even a sound. But inside her, something small had begun to move. Not trust. Not yet. But curiosity. He never touched her. Not even once. Not when she dropped things. Not when she spilled water. He just quietly picked them up or cleaned the mess, then gave her a small nod like it was no big deal. She watched him. The way he worked with tools, the way he spoke kindly to the old robot who barely responded. He seemed tired sometimes. His hands were rough, his back always sore. Yet he smiled when he passed her, even if she didn't smile back. One evening, as stars filled the sky, he opened the side door of the ship and said, "Come see this." She didn't move. But after he stepped away, she crawled slowly toward the door. What she saw made her freeze. Open sky. Real sky. Endless stars above a quiet forest. The wind touched her skin like soft fingers. It had been years since she had felt air that was not thick with smoke. She stepped outside. The ground was soft, full of grass and small flowers. She knelt and touched them, almost afraid they would disappear. A small sound escaped her lips. A sound like a breath. The first real breath she had taken in a very long time. He was standing a few steps away, not watching her, just looking at the stars. She sat on the ground until the sun began to rise. She did not speak, but she did not return to the ship either. That night, something inside her had changed. In the days that followed, she started walking around the ship, slowly, carefully. She found a soft cloth and used it to clean her room. Not because he asked, but because she wanted to. She even placed a tiny wildflower beside the bed. A small thing, but it mattered to her. One day, she saw him sitting at his desk again, writing in that notebook. She stood in the hallway, hidden by the wall. She knew that word was still in there, wife. And once again, it made her heart beat strangely. She wanted to ask what it meant, but her voice felt lost, buried deep. She had not spoken in years. She was afraid it might not work anymore. That night, she had a dream. In the dream, she was running through a field, free and happy. She wore no chains. She was laughing. And someone held her hand. She woke up with tears on her face. Later that day, she gathered all her courage. She walked to the kitchen and poured water into 2 cups. She brought one to him and placed it on the table. He looked surprised, then smiled gently. "Thank you," he said softly. She nodded. Just once. It was the first time she had done something for someone, just because she wanted to. He picked up a small machine that was broken and handed it to her. "Want to help me fix this?" She hesitated, then took it. Her hands were unsure, but steady. He showed her how to open it, how to check the wires, how to connect the pieces. She listened carefully. And when the lights blinked on, she looked up at him with wide eyes. "You did that," he said. She lowered her head quickly, but a small smile touched her lips before it vanished. He didn't say anything about it. He just kept working. That night, she sat in her bed and whispered a single word, not out loud. Not yet. But inside her heart hoped out, and she knew whatever this place was, whoever this man was, this was the first time in her life she had felt something close to peace. The chains were gone, but now she had to learn how to breathe again. She touches the sky. The wind was stronger on this planet. It carried the scent of trees, wildflowers, and something sweet she could not name. The human man had taken her outside again, this time without saying a word. Just a gentle nod, as if asking her permission. And she had followed. They stood on a small hill near the forest. The sun was setting. The sky burned with orange and pink light. It was more beautiful than anything she had ever seen. She raised her face to the sky and closed her eyes. The warm air touched her skin like a whisper. She stretched her arms wide and breathed deeply. For a few seconds, she forgot who she was. Forgot the pain, the chains, the cold floors of dark cells. For those few seconds, she felt like she was flying. Birds passed above them, calling to one another. She watched them move freely across the sky. Her lips parted slightly. She had never seen creatures so free, so alive. The man stood beside her. He didn't speak, didn't interrupt her silence. He only placed a light shawl around her shoulders when the wind turned cool. Then he sat on a stone and waited. She turned and looked at him. For the first time, she saw him not as her owner, not as her rescuer, but as a person. His face was tired, lined with quiet sadness. His eyes carried stories she hadn't heard yet, but there was no cruelty in them, no hunger for power. She sat beside him. He handed her a small piece of fruit. It was yellow and soft. She sniffed it carefully before taking a bite. Sweet juice dripped down her fingers. She smiled without realizing it. He noticed, but didn't say a word. They sat like that until night fell. In the dark, she spoke. Just one word. Beautiful, her voice was. Small, dry, and cracked. But it was a voice. He turned slowly to look at her, eyes wide with quiet surprise. Then, softly, he smiled again. Yes, he said, it is. That night, she didn't sleep on the floor. She slept in the bed. For the first time, she felt safe enough to close her eyes. The next morning, she found him in his small workshop. Machines, wires, tools, and glowing lights surrounded him. She watched from the doorway. He noticed her and held out a small box. Want to help me fix it? She walked over and nodded. As they worked, he showed her how to connect the wires, how to read the colors, how to feel the pulse of the machine. Her hands moved slowly at first, but soon they became faster, more sure. She fixed it. A tiny light blinked on. A quiet hum filled the air. He clapped once. Perfect. Her chest rose with a strange new feeling. Pride. She had done something right. She was not just broken. She was useful. Later that day, a group of traders visited the area. They were loud and strange. She stayed inside, peeking through the small window. She saw two alien women walk up to the human man. They laughed and touched his arm. He smiled politely but didn't say much. Then they left. Something burned inside her chest. She didn't understand. It wasn't fear. It wasn't pain. It was something else. A sharp, hot feeling she couldn't name. She sat in her room and tried to ignore it. Later, when he brought her food, she didn't look at him. He paused, then asked, "Are you okay?" She nodded, but the feeling didn't leave her. Not even after. The stars returned to the sky. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her thoughts kept returning to those women. The way they smiled at him. The way he smiled back. Was he going to give her away? Had he only saved her to show kindness and then pass her along? She got out of bed and crept through the hallway. She found the notebook again, the one he always wrote in. She opened it. There, between pages full of machine notes and repair plans, was a single drawing. It was her. Sitting by the stream, holding a flower. Below it, one word was written again. Wife. She touched the page with trembling fingers. Her heart pounded. She didn't know what it meant fully, but it no longer scared her. It made her curious. Why her? Why that word? She closed the notebook quietly and returned to her room. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, whispering the word to herself again and again. Wife. It felt heavy. It felt powerful. It felt like the beginning of something. She didn't yet understand, but she wanted to know more. She wanted to learn, not just how to breathe, but how to live. A heart that still beats. The rain came without warning. It was light at first, just soft drops tapping on the roof. Then it grew stronger. Cold wind slipped through the cracks of the door. She stood near the window, watching the sky pour. Her eyes followed the lines of water running down the glass, as if they were tears the sky could no longer hold. The human man was late returning from the market. He had gone to trade parts. He always came back before sunset, but the sky was already dark. She wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and paced the room. Her hands were tight, her breathing uneven. She told herself not to care, not to feel. But the fear in her chest was real. Suddenly the door opened. He stepped in, soaked from head to toe, carrying a small box. His face was pale, his hand bleeding. He had slipped while climbing the hill. She ran forward without thinking. She grabbed his arm and pulled him to a chair. She took clean cloth from the shelf, poured warm water, and began to clean his wound. Her hands moved quickly, gently. He said nothing, only watched her. She didn't look up until she finished. Then she asked, "Why didn't you wait for the storm to stop?" He smiled softly. "I wanted to bring you this." He opened the box. Inside was a small pendant, a silver heart, simple and beautiful. Nothing fancy, but polished and warm. "For you," he said. "I thought maybe you'd like it." She stared at it. No one had ever given her anything without wanting something in return. She touched the pendant with her fingertips, then slowly nodded. Her eyes burned, but she held back the tears. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat beside his bed, watching him breathe. He had fallen asleep without asking why she stayed. He trusted her. Fully. When morning came, he woke to find her still sitting there, holding the pendant tightly in her hand. She whispered, "Thank you." The words were soft, but her voice was clearer now, stronger. He sat up and looked at her. "I'm glad you stayed," he said. In the days that followed, she helped him more. She learned how to fix parts, how to cook simple meals, how to plant tiny herbs in the garden behind the ship. She smiled more. She even laughed once when the old robot tripped over a wire and made a strange noise. He laughed too. That moment stayed with her. But something else came too. One morning, a traveler stopped by their camp, an alien from a far-off system. He asked for fuel and food in exchange for credits. The human agreed. They shared a meal. The traveler looked at her and said, "You were a slave, yes?" She nodded slowly. He smirked. Strange how humans like to pretend they're kind. She froze. The traveler added, "Enjoy it while it lasts. He'll want something one day. They always do." She stood and left the room without a word. Later that night, she sat outside alone. The stars above her seemed colder now. She hugged herself, unsure again. That old fear had returned. The human came and sat beside her. "He was wrong," the man said. She looked at him. "I didn't save you because I wanted something," he continued. "I saved you because no one else did. Because you mattered even when others said you didn't." She opened her mouth, then closed it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small tag. It was made of simple metal, shaped like a leaf. He handed it to her. Carved into it were the words, "My heart is yours." She stared at it, her fingers trembling. Tears finally fell, not from fear, not from pain, but from something else, something warm, something heavy. He didn't speak again. He let her cry. She clutched the pendant and the tag tightly in her hand. For the first time, she felt something deep inside her begin to heal. Her heart had been silent for years, but now it began to beat again. Asterisk the word that changed her. She woke to the sound of the wind whispering through the trees. The morning light was soft, golden, and quiet. She sat up, holding the small tag close to her chest. My heart is yours. The words still echoed in her mind. Every day she read them again. Not with her eyes, she had memorized them. She read them with her heart. He was already outside, working on the transport engine. His hands were covered in oil, his shirt stained, and sweat rolled down his neck. She watched him from the doorway for a long moment. He wasn't like other men. He never stared, never touched without asking, never raised his voice. He made her feel like she mattered. And now, more than ever, she wanted to matter to him, later. That day they had to go to a nearby trade post for supplies. It was a quiet market with a few small stands. Some aliens gave her strange looks, some pointed. One even whispered the word slave under their breath. She lowered her head and stayed close to him, but he didn't walk ahead like he owned her. He walked beside her, matching her steps. He spoke softly to the shopkeepers. He didn't rush. He always made sure she was comfortable. And when she looked nervous, he gently placed a hand near hers, not touching, just close enough to say, "You're safe." On the way back, a group of young alien men blocked the road. They laughed and circled them. "Looks like you picked up something dirty," one of them said. "Used slave?" "Not even worth the fuel," another added. She felt her body freeze. Old memories clawed at her chest. Her hands shook, but before she could step back, the human man stepped forward. His voice was calm, steady. "She's not a slave," the leader laughed. "Then what is she?" The human looked them in the eye and said one word, "Wife." The laughter stopped. The air turned still. The alien stared at him in disbelief, then backed away slowly, confused and silent. She couldn't breathe. That word wife, he had said it. Out loud, in front of others, not hidden in a notebook, not whispered in the dark. He had said it for the world to hear. Back at the ship, she sat in silence. Her heart raced. That one word had changed everything. He didn't mean it like a trick. He meant it like a promise. She stood in the hallway, unsure what to say. Then she walked to the workroom where he was fixing wires. He looked up at her. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Only a tear fell down her cheek. He stood up, gentle and careful. "I didn't say it to scare you," he said. "I said it because it's true. That's how I see you. Not a slave. Not a burden, but someone I care about, deeply." She tried to speak, but her throat tightened. So instead, she did something she had never done before. She reached out. Her hand touched his. It was small, unsure, and soft. He didn't move. He didn't speak. She whispered, "Why me?" He smiled. "Because you survived when others would have. Given up. Because your heart still shines, even after everything. Because you're strong and you don't even see it." Her tears flowed freely now. He gently pulled out something from his pocket, a small ring made of woven metal wire. Simple, not expensive, but made with care. "I made this last night," he said quietly. "I didn't know if you'd want it, but I had to try." She looked at the ring, then back at him. For a moment, the silence held everything. Then she whispered back, voice trembling but clear, "Put it on." He slid it onto her finger, and for the first time, she smiled fully, without fear. The word had changed her. It had broken the last chain. She was not Property. She was not broken. She was not alone. She was his wife, and she finally believed it. Asterisk. Her chains turned to wings. She no longer walked with her head down. She now stepped outside with quiet pride, wearing a soft robe he had stitched with his own hands. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. The sleeves were long, the fabric gentle against her skin, and there was no chain around her neck. Only the small ring on her finger, shining like a secret promise. The wind touched her face, and she smiled back at it. For the first time, she didn't feel like hiding. She helped him carry tools to the village nearby. She stood beside him when they traded with others. She even spoke a few words when someone asked her name. Her voice still shook sometimes, but she didn't hide it. Not everyone accepted her. Some aliens looked at her with cold eyes. Some muttered under their breath. But she didn't lower her gaze. She stood taller now because he stood beside her, and that gave her strength. One day, they were invited to a gathering. At first, she didn't want to go. Too many eyes, too many memories, but he said, "You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to prove anything. Just come as you are." So she went. The town square was filled with lights, music, and laughter. Children played in the dust. Traders set up food stalls. Couples danced to the slow rhythm of drums. She stood close to him, unsure. He looked at her with a warm smile and asked, "May I?" He reached out his hand. She looked at it. And slowly, she placed her hand in his. They didn't dance like others. They didn't spin or move with grace. They just swayed gently. Her feet were unsure. She stepped on his once, and they both laughed. People stared, some in shock, some in disgust. But others smiled. One old woman clapped slowly. Then a few others joined in. No one stopped them. No one pulled her away. They simply watched, and she realized something important that night. She was no longer in a cage. She wasn't hiding behind doors in dark rooms. She was standing in the open, in the light. In his arms, she was free. When they returned to their ship, he gave her a small mirror. She held it with trembling hands. For years, she had refused to look at her own reflection. It reminded her of the bruises, the scars, the fear. But now she looked. What she saw surprised her. Her face was still marked by the past. But her eyes had changed. They no longer held fear. They held fire. They held life. She placed the mirror down and looked at him. "Thank you," she said, voice steady. He shook his head gently. "You did that yourself." She wanted to believe him. And maybe, deep down, she already did. But peace doesn't last long in places where hate still lives. The next day, an armored patrol ship landed near their home. A guard stepped out tall, cold, and dressed in the colors of the slave markets. He looked at her with sharp eyes and said, "You, former property of Sector 9, you are not allowed to leave without owner's permission." She froze. The human stepped between them. "She is not property. She is my wife." The guard scoffed. "There's no record of such a union." "Then make one," the human said. His voice was calm, but steel lay underneath. The guard sneered. "You've broken interspecies law. A human cannot claim a former slave without permission from the council." "I didn't claim her," he said. "She claimed herself." The guard pulled out a scanner and aimed it at her. She flinched. The human stepped in front of her again. "You'll have to go through me," he said. A moment of silence passed. Then, slowly, the guard lowered the scanner. "You're not worth the paperwork," he muttered. "But don't leave this system. We'll be watching." The ship lifted off and vanished into the sky. She stood still, hands cold. He turned and looked at her. "Are you all right?" She nodded, slowly. Then, after a moment, whispered, "I was afraid. But I didn't run." He smiled. because your chains are gone." She looked at her hands. No cuffs, no scars. Just soft fingers, open and free. That night, she sat by the window, watching the stars. And for the first time, she didn't wonder what it felt like to fly. She already knew. Her chains had turned to wings. Asterisk, a new name. A new home. The garden was small, but it was hers. Each morning, she watered the plants with care. Little green stems pushed through the soil. Flowers with soft colors opened to the sun. She touched their petals gently, as if afraid they might break. But they didn't. Like her, they were stronger than they looked. Beside the garden was their home, built from scrap metal and hope. It wasn't grand, but it stood tall and warm. Inside, the walls were lined with drawings, simple machines, and quiet memories. Outside, the wind carried laughter. Hers. She laughed now, not often, but when she did, it was full and real. The villagers had grown used to seeing her. Some still whispered, but others nodded politely, and a few even waved. Children came close, sometimes curious about the woman with strange eyes and a soft voice. She had learned many things. How to cook food that didn't burn, how to fix simple machines, how to use her voice again. And she had learned the most important word of all. Wife. Not a title. Not a name someone gave her. It was a truth she accepted with her whole heart. One quiet afternoon, while cleaning the old storage room, she found a box full of papers. Among them was a picture. A young girl with wide eyes standing beside two smiling parents. She brought the photo to him. "Your family?" she asked. He nodded. "They're gone now. War took them." She looked at the girl in the photo. "She looks like you?" he chuckled. "That was my sister, always bossy." She smiled and placed the photo on the shelf. Later that evening, he gave her a gift. Wrapped in cloth, it was a small notebook with blank pages. "For your thoughts," he said, "your story." She opened the first page and held the pen carefully. Then she wrote her name. Not the number they gave her. Not the nickname. Others used her real name. The one she had buried deep inside. It felt powerful. Like taking her life back, one letter at a time. She filled the next page with a drawing, two hands, holding each other under a tree. No chains. Just peace. The next morning she stood before the mirror. She looked different now. Not just on the outside. Inside too. Her eyes held light. Her face held strength. She no longer saw a slave. She saw a woman, a builder, a friend, a partner. His partner. That evening, as the sun dipped low, they stood on the hill where it all began. The same hill where she had first seen the stars. He held her hand. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I want to stay," she whispered. "You already have," he said. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. The air was soft, clean, and full of life. She remembered the cold floors, the cruel voices, the long nights of silence. But they no longer controlled her. They were part of her past, not her future. Then she turned to him and asked a question. "Do you want children one day?" He looked surprised for a moment, then smiled gently. "Yes, if you do." She nodded slowly. "Then one day," she said, "not now, but one day, I'd like that." He squeezed her hand. And together they walked back. Home. Not to a cage, not to a shelter, but to a place they built with care, kindness, and time. A real home. That night, as the stars returned once more, she sat beside him and opened her notebook again. On a fresh page, she wrote one final line before. Sleep took her. He called me wife, but I call myself free. And for the first time, she believed it completely.